July 24th, 2018, I was sitting in my house watching TV and playing with my phone, and that's when I discovered that Demi Lovato had been rushed to the hospital with a near-fatal heroin overdose. It's been almost 3 years, but I could still remember my first reaction. It wasn't, oh, I hope she's going to be okay, or how could she do such a thing? Sadly, I must admit that my first reaction was, oh God, I hope the media doesn't crucify this girl like they do all the others. Now, flash forward to me 2 weeks ago, lying in my bed at 3 in the morning, having a grand mal panic attack and incapable of sleep, and trying to calm myself down with some YouTube on my phone. That's when I discovered Dancing with the Devil, Demi Lovato's documentary outlining the whole thing. And by the time they got to the lyric, I told you I was okay, but I was lying, I knew that this wasn't the story of just some singer who overdosed again, but an issue for mental health that we could all take a lesson from. I'm Linda. This is Linda's World, and this is Demi Lovato. I told you I was okay, but I was lying. I have to admit before we begin that I kind of never paid attention to Demi Lovato too much before her overdose. Not because I didn't like her, but because I'm 44 years old. That's not my generation. I'm lucky to know the singers I do know. I remember her from my ex-stepdaughter in the 2010s when she watched the Disney Channel back when I was married. And I remember that she branched out into mainstream music, and I saw her on SNL and thought she did a damn fine job. But that's pretty much all I noticed until that infamous day in 2018. Now, why it was of interest to me so much was because I didn't see this as a singer who OD'd, like Jim Morrison or Janis Joplin or somebody of that nature. I saw a person who was crying out for assistance with their mental health and was destined to be reduced to just another artist OD unless she came out and told the story. And that's why I'm incredibly proud of Dancing with the Devil. And I think that it could teach us an awful lot. Now, I'm going to break this down into 3 categories for us in this video: her drug use, her eating disorder, and her music and moving forward, and what we can learn from the documentary. So why don't we get started on that? Now, as far as her drug use, I don't live under a rock, so I remember when she went to rehab the first time, and I remember that her drug of choice was cocaine and that she was bipolar. They discovered when she went in, right? And she has a family history of mental illness with her dad, and we'll get to that later. But the thing is that I was not shocked in the slightest that that was her DOC, her drug of choice, because what a lot of people don't realize about stimulants is that they are often prescribed to counteract mania and hyperactivity. I'm bipolar, right? So I happen to know that lithium is what I take to control my moods and to give them a base, right? But I also know that if I were in the stretch of a manic episode, then they might want to give me a stimulant to counteract it. If your child goes to the doctor and is diagnosed with ADHD, they're going to give him Ritalin or Adderall. Okay, so Demi was in a sense doing that with her cocaine use because she was trying to level the situation out, right? And of course it got out of control, and there she went in for help. Okay, now I'm not going to stand here and say, or sit here and say, that all of the controls placed on Demi at the time she was 19 was for evil. You know, I imagine that they were good intentioned. A person who needs help should get it, and she did. But I think that what happened is that she was kept under such an incredible microscope for 6 years that she was stripped of every single ounce of the control she had as an adult human being. She was over 18 years old at this point. That I'm surprised that the overdose didn't happen sooner. Because here's the thing. They beat into her head back in when she was 19 that she had to be sober so she could perform, and that she could live her best life, and that she could see her little sister, and all these things that the documentary mentions, right? And that's absolutely true. But the thing is that she herself in the documentary explains that it had been 6 years, and she's like, well, I'm miserable. And like, everyone's telling me, if you touch this thing, you're gonna die. Don't pick up a glass, you're gonna die. And like, and she's sitting there in her sobriety, eating her carrots. We'll get to the eating disorder in a moment. And like, and just thinking, I'm living in hell now. So like, what's the point, you know? And so she decided, as she describes in the video, to pick up a beverage. You know, she just began slowly with drinking. But here's what. And now, because I don't suffer from an addiction, I can't claim to know that this is true, but it's been explained to me by people who do. That a lot of people say, well, you weren't addicted to alcohol, so like, why you just stay away from cocaine, you know, or just, you know, you smoke weed, but that's not heroin, so, you know. No, apparently when we alter chemical makeup, with like if we smoke weed or if we drink alcohol, like our inhibitions get lower, so we start thinking about, hey, what else can I do? So like in essence, the person who's addicted to cocaine shouldn't drink like wine, because then they'll get drunk and they'll be like, I know what's a good idea, and the floodgates are open. And I know that there's a lot of people who enjoy moderation in their sobriety, and that's what sobriety looks like for them, and that's absolutely great. But then there are people who can't do that because the moderation doesn't work or whatever. So I guess in her case, that's what happened, right? So there she goes, and she said she was off and running. She says in the documentary that she tried meth for the first time, and she smoked crack, and she was like, oh, bust out with the heroin, like, let's go, I've always wanted to try it. And she was just off and running at the races, because you can't suppress a person from anything for that long of a time and have the, not just suppress their behaviors, but know what was riding on it. Like all of the people around her, every person, from the person who prepares her meals, and I promise we're getting to that eating disorder, to the person who like wakes her up in the morning to go to the doctor's appointment, that woman Jordan in the documentary, to like Max, the security guy, they are all like, they all have houses and food because of Demi Lovato. You know what I mean? Like she's the boss of all this. She has to perform. And so she knows that if she slips up, she's slipping up, it's going to be a domino effect, and people are going to be suffering. People will be out of jobs. People will be ridiculed online. People will be hungry. You know what I mean? Because she didn't perform. So the pressure cooker was on. So not only can't she do anything without authorization as a full adult, but if she doesn't do the right thing, everyone's going to starve to death because she's the boss and she won't make the money. Like record sales go down. This guy doesn't eat. And that's an awful lot of pressure to put on a person in their 20s, a person in their 40s, a person in their 80s. Nobody needs that kind of pressure, okay? Especially not a recovering addict who suffers from bipolar disorder. Believe me, we don't need that kind of pressure, okay? So there you have it, right? Now, the night of the overdose, Demi Lovato explains that she went out with her friends, came home, texted her dealer to come over to bring her crack and heroin, right? And she said that she appreciated the kind of speedball that it represented, that she used to do that with cocaine and Xanax. She said that she was high enough to enjoy, but down enough to not like panic. You know what I mean? Like she could stay awake and enjoy her high and not go crazy, right? It was a balancing act. That's why people do speedball. I understand a little something about drugs, please understand, right? So therefore she calls this gentleman up, and they go in the bedroom, and she's smoking her heroin, right? And I find it interesting that she thought that because she was smoking it on the tinfoil, as people do, they call it chasing the dragon, that she wasn't going to, she said that she wasn't going to overdose because like she wasn't injecting it. She's like, I've injected it before, but not tonight. So why the hell did I wake up in the hospital? And I totally understand that fallacy, because it's like you see like the way the drugs are portrayed in the media, even a person who's done a certain amount of drugs in their lives sees other stuff happen in the movies, and they're like, well, that's what happens when like, that's like Sid and Nancy or something like that. Like that's like, people who are like in the gutter with needles that are dirty and, things like that, like Gia Karanji or, I'm trying to think of people who've been addicted to the needle, and she was surprised that she overdosed, right? And then of course, too much of anything is an overdose, and that's the point. But then she gets into this thing, and I'm going to say this, and this is going to take us into my reaction to the situation regarding her eating disorder, okay? Now, what we can learn from this situation is this. Demi called up this gentleman. He got her high as a kite, took advantage of her sexually, and then left her for dead. When her assistant woke her up the next morning, or tried to wake her up the next morning, she was blue. There was like barf in the room, and the doctor asked her had she had consensual sex when they were looking at her body, and she said yes, because she didn't quite know where to place that yet, and so the thing is that this is the last thing that this poor girl needed, because she had been violated before. She describes in the documentary being 15 years old, and her Me Too story is being date raped. You know, she called it off, but the guy in question took it forward, you know, without her consent. And when she explained this to the powers that be, the guy had no repercussions, didn't even get taken off the movie. And her Me Too story never gave her any she never got assistance from her Me Too story because she felt like she couldn't even have one. She explains in the documentary that she was like, I've always had something to say, you know, and I saw Rihanna come out with the Chris Brown, you know, abuse pics and be persecuted for her part in her own abuse. So like, I wasn't about to say anything. And that's what's wrong with our society. The fact that a person can't just come out and be like, I was wronged by XYZ person, and have that person be taken into the right punishment, you know what I mean? Because, oh, it's coming from her, you know, like, oh, Demi always has something to say, you know, why is it always going to be her, you know, and stuff like that. And I've been in that predicament myself where it's like, oh, Linda said it, so it can't be true. I get into that predicament more times than I care to count. And so that's why by the time she was telling this story, and I'm not even a person who cries at this stuff, I was crying because I could see a person being like, oh, it's only Demi, so like, why should we even care? You know, and it's only Linda, so why should we even care? And I know exactly what that means. And if anyone, and I'm going to tell you right now, if anything drives a person, if anything will motivate a human being to react badly, to damage themselves, to self-medicate in any way, whatever that way is, too much food, too little food, throwing up your food, drugs, alcohol, self-harm, doesn't matter what, name your poison, punching holes in the wall, right? Whatever you do that's unhealthy, you want a person to go do those unhealthy behaviors, you take their power away. And that is exactly what happened to Demi then and over the next 6 years. So now the eating disorder. Now, when the album came out the other night, I stayed up late to listen, and I just sort of boop, 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 went through the songs really quickly so I can go to bed. And I am an old lady. And I got to the song Melon Cake. And I had heard her say that for 6 years, she couldn't even have such rigid restrictions were placed on her dietarily that she couldn't even have birthday cake. They cut a watermelon in a circle and put fat-free whipped cream on it with some sprinkles and some candles, and that was her birthday cake, was watermelon. And the lyric says, no more melon cakes on birthdays, no more, oh, I don't remember the lyric now, and I'm embarrassing myself. Finally get to do things my way. And then the lyric that I loved so much, and it didn't have to be about an eating disorder or anything, she says, dear little me, I'm sorry that it took so long, but baby, you're free. Okay, so the pressure cooker builds even further when you say, okay, so listen, you can't do any drugs or drinking, but also you can't even eat what you want. And we know that you've been in pageants and decided that your self-worth was based in your size and that you overexercise and that you cry if you eat a carrot, too many, and that you have this raging eating disorder. How about we make it worse? And we get you a personal trainer and a personal chef and all these things that money can buy, but we restrict your food intake so much that you can't even have your own birthday cake. But listen, if you're upset about it, you can't do any drugs either. So just suck it up, buttercup. That's not what is healthy. There's nothing healthy about this. And I don't know what she plans to do about this, but OMG lawsuit, her team is so responsible for this, but that's just me. And I don't have a team because I don't have that kind of money, so that was just what I have to say. Okay, so now the thing about her eating disorder, it's funny, I have to say, in all honesty, that I saw her for the first time since her overdose, or I guess the first time that I was conscious of seeing her since her overdose, in about 2019, when she did a couple of guest spots on Will and Grace, playing the, she was going to be a surrogate mother for Will's baby or something like that. And I remember looking at her on the program and thinking that she'd gotten a little heavy. And I remember, I knew she had an eating disorder, and I was horrified at my own self. I'm being perfectly honest. My first reaction was, wow, she's gained weight. And I didn't think that made her a bad person. It was just, or like, ew, she's yucky or anything. It just was, I guess it was just where my brain went. And it's because I'm not without my own issues regarding size anyway. Like, I mean, that's the currency that my brain has. I equate myself with my size, a little too much to be comfortable. And so I'm critical of other women sometimes because I'm so critical of myself. And then I have to dial it back and stop. And I have to be like, something? If she's a little heavier than she used to be sitting here on this episode of Will and Grace, that's wonderful. You know why? Because she's having real birthday cakes instead of watermelon. Because she's going to Taco Bell and she's keeping it down. Okay? And that's wonderful. Okay? And so it was there that I checked that and realized that that must have meant growth and health for Demi Lovato. Now, moving forward with her music and the way that I felt about the songs when I first heard them and how I marry together the music of the album and like even the cover art was awesome and like just my take on the songs as they are now and the way that I feel about the documentary and her, her health moving forward and why I've suddenly become a Lovatic is this thing here. So the album is called Dancing with the Devil, The Art of Starting Over. It very clearly begins with the song Anyone, which was written before her overdose, when she was saying, the song says, I tried to talk to my piano, I tried to talk to my guitar, and, and I tried to talk to my imagination, but they weren't listening. And, why am I praying if nobody's listening? And I'm singing a million songs and nobody's listening. And the thing is, she's using listening as a metaphor, and I internalize it as seeing. Like nobody sees me. Like I'm right here. And like I'm standing right here talking to you. And you don't see me, you don't hear me, right? It's like you see Demi Lovato, but do you see me? And no, they didn't. And that's exactly why what happened to her. And that's why Anyone starts the album, because it is a journey. Okay, because right after that comes Dancing with the Devil, the title track, and it explains how quickly a person who can sing Anyone can wind up singing Dancing with the Devil. It tells a story. It's just a little red wine, I'll be fine. Not like I want to do this every night. I've been good, don't I deserve it? I think I earned it. Feels like it's worth it in my mind. And yes, it is. How many of us don't pick up whatever it is that we use to satisfy ourselves, food, alcohol, weed, whatever, right? And say, I deserve this. I've been working hard all week. I deserve this, and you do. But what if it turns on you, as played out brilliantly in the next verse, which is, it's just a little white line, I'll be fine. But soon that little white line is a little glass pipe. Tinfoil remedy almost got the best of me. I keep praying that I don't reach the end of my lifetime. And that's the thing. That's what separates the modest user from the addicted, because a single white line becomes more and more and more and more until finally you got to get it from the pipe because the little white lines on the mirror aren't doing it enough anymore for you. And, and I've seen that, I understand what that is. You don't get to be 44 and not see some stuff. And so I get that, right? Tinfoil remedy, of course, being the heroin that she smoked. And so, like, she goes from crying out for help on the album to recovering from the situation. And the brilliance of the lyric, I told you I was okay, but I was lying. The reason this video gets that title is because I've never heard anything in my life more simply put. Okay? I've never heard, it's not poetry. It didn't take it's not a crazy invention, that lyric, okay? She didn't have to think all day about it. She literally was like, listen, I'm faking. Okay? I'm not okay. All right? You said, how are you, Demi? She said, I'm fine. And she was not. Okay? I've got 44 years experience doing that, so I totally understand what she's talking about. And I don't think I'm the only one either. How many of us out there, I get accused a lot of times of thinking I'm the only person with problems. That's not the case. I'm just the only person with my problems. You're the only person with your problems. Demi was the only person with her problems, right? And so, I told you I was okay, but I was lying. And now you see, I was dancing with the devil, out of control, almost made it to heaven. It was closer than you know. And then the parlay into the next part of the album ends with when she was legally blind in the hospital and she couldn't physically actually see her little sister Madison, and she sings the song I See You, letter I, letter C, letter U, being in the ICU, but seeing her sister. Okay, and a beautiful ballad about her sister that was like, it's like beautiful piano and tearful and wonderful music. But that's the last piece of old Demi we get, because the album, and I don't want this to turn in just a an album reaction video, because that's not what it is. It's more holistic than that. The album, she says, I asked you, to come on a journey with me. Here we go. And every song on that album from that point on, The Art of Starting Over, explains what should have been done 6 years ago. No more melon cakes on birthdays. Okay? The kind of lover I am, expressing the fact that it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, her subtle nod to her pansexuality, right? I mean, all of the secrets, all of the truths about her, all of the parts of her that she kept hidden in her old life, her prior to overdose life, the Demi that was being squelched in a little can, right, comes out on this album. And it's beautiful. And it ends with the song Good Place, letting us, the listener, know that that's what she's in. And that there might be something else wrong in the future. It's okay, because that's life. But right now, she is in a good place. She's in a good enough place to eat that real birthday cake. She's in a good place to be in a relationship with a woman or a man. She has the song 15 Minutes, about her ex-fiance, because she's since said, and it's not even just the documentary, it's the little film clips that I've seen since then about her explaining that she's done putting on the facade. She cut off all her hair. And you know why? Because two things. Number one, she said she used to hide behind it and all her extensions so you couldn't see her body because she was self-conscious with her eating disorder. And also, that's a whole lot of hair is incredibly feminine, and as a person who wants to embrace her sexuality, that she likes both women and men, she doesn't want her hair to give her the heteronormative look while she may be exploring other avenues. She says she feels more like me, she said to Ellen, who understands that, of course. And there you go, right? And she said, Lovatic, look out, because she's totally shaving her head at some point, and I'd like to see what that looks like. But nevertheless, this is the freest she's ever been. And that's why I know that this album, Dancing with the Devil, The Art of Starting Over, and this 4-part documentary, we have 1 part left to go, right, this is a healing project. And it's awesome music anyway. I highly recommend people listen because it's just great songs. But it's more than that. It's not an apology for having done bad, okay? Because that's not what addiction is. It's an explanation of what's been wrong and how she's about to make it right. For herself, for the people around her who earn money from her, but also the people around her who just love her, right? And for us, the audience, and then back into her so she can keep creating and she can go forth into this next adventure. I'd like to end this video by saying that one of her friends in the documentary said that last year when she had her 27th birthday, they all joked and laughed about how she made it, she turned 28, and they made it because they said that she's not in the 27 club, that she's gonna live past 27, unlike Amy Winehouse and Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and, Kurt Cobain. And I the thing is, it's kind of funny, but how depressing is it? And I gotta tell you that I go back to my original thought. The original piece in this video, when I said my first thought was, oh God, please don't let them demonize this poor girl, is because I knew that if she lived through that incident and then she didn't get well and she did it again, because I know she was 25, and if she did it again and she died at 27, she would just be reduced to that. And they don't even, Amy Winehouse was a person. Janis Joplin was a person. Kurt Cobain was a person. They're not a weird club of dead people. Okay? They lived They were humans. They mattered to people. People cried because they were dead. Like they were little babies once. You know what I mean? Like they were on the earth. They mattered, right? And either the demons in here or the demons out there or whatever cut them down. And I am so happy that Demi Lovato is not going to be reduced to that because the demons didn't cut her down. She danced with the devil, out of control, almost made it to heaven. It was closer than you know. Playing with the enemy, gambling with her soul. But here's the thing. She won. And I'm incredibly happy that she's been here to tell about it.